Welcome to Sounds Like Portraits. I'm Philippe Ungar. This is a conversation on creativity. For this episode, I met Jérôme de Chaunac, Managing Director Americas of PSG. Yes, the Parisian soccer team, Paris Saint-Germain. Interestingly, France is only the sixth country in terms of number of fans, far from Brazil, US and China. Like Manchester United or Barcelona or Real Madrid, PSG is now a global brand with superstar players Neymar and Mbappé, and it has more than 300 million fans around the world. Wow, that's a lot. Jérôme is here in New York to develop the PSG's branding process in South and North America. So I asked him what kind of experience the PSG wants to offer to its fans far from the Parisian stadium. It's time to listen to him. But before, he told me what he tried to do all his life.
All my life I've been inspired by sport and by athletes. The top ones, they're artists. They create every single minute. That's why at some point I said, no, I need to work in sports. I know I'm not going to be a number one player of any sport in the world, so how can I contribute myself to the business of sports?
You say sport people are creating at every moment. What kind of creation is it?
It's interesting because it's a very big mix between they train every day, every year. They have to prepare for every single situation. But that, at the end of the day, when the day happens of the game, they have to be able to go beyond what they've just been training on the whole year. And what I love about it is when, take Roger Federer. He has an impossible passing shot to deliver. He does it just because he's been trained, but also because at some point there's some magic. If you take a football player, the way Mbappé will score at the end of the day, it's just because he's inventing while he's playing. And that's what I love about it.
There's good news for you about the Parisian soccer team, PSG. PSG won against Manchester United yesterday. What does it inspire you?
Obviously, there is a return game, so we won't say that we are qualified before the return game. We know by history that anything can happen, but we're on the right track. But beyond that, what is really inspiring is it brings to every single person working for this company, Paris Saint-Germain, where you have a few dozens professional players, but you have a few hundreds people working around them, that by having such a great result on the field, you inspire every single person that works for the company, and you send the message when you're a player that everything that those persons do on their daily basis has a purpose, which is to become one of the top sports brands in the world.
I found out that there are more than 300,000 PSG fans all over the world. How do you explain that?
If I may correct you, it's 300 million fans around the world. And indeed, we have about 20 academies in the country, plus about 20 fan clubs. PSG and other big clubs are now truly global brands, which is why we now have an office in the Americas, we have an office in Asia, is because we have to be able to be closer to our fans all around the world. We don't just have fans in Paris or in France. We have, actually France is our sixth country in terms of number of fans. Brazil, US, China is bigger. And we have to be able to understand better why they are fans, how we can bring them enough content, enough events, enough opportunity to interact with the club. And by being closer to them, we are able to also talk to them in their own language. No, I'm not just talking about English or Chinese or French. I'm also talking about cultural differences that are really important for fans.
How did the sport industry change over the years?
This industry has evolved a lot. The digitalization is obviously something that takes sport to every single person at every single minute. The 24/7, 365 is really something that has changed dramatically the way sports is part of everybody's life. The reason why sports is so popular, for instance, in TV is because it's the only live program that you have anymore. You don't have any TV program live anymore, but sports, because of the magic of what's going to happen in the next 60 or 90 minutes, you never know what's going to happen. You have to watch the games live, and that's something that is truly important. Now, the way sports has become a business is also something that is very different from 30 or 40 years ago. Some people were inspirers for all of us working in that industry when they realized that it was going to be a true business, whether it's on the media rights, whether it's on sponsorship, whether it's on how you can improve the experience in a stadium. All this has become truly professional. And also a lot of sports are becoming a true way to test a lot of things.
Can we take an example of that?
So a few examples, in sports that need technology on a daily basis, like motorsports or sailing, a lot of the participants and companies that are involved just test things and during the races or the championship. And then, for instance, in Formula One, you will test something, and Mercedes and Ferrari or Renault you will find it on your car in 5 years or 10 years from now. Another example is all the wearable technology that now you can find almost on any athlete. Is you can collect data about the performance of an athlete with a view to improving that performance, helping him run faster or be able to spend not 70 minutes at 100%, but 90 minutes at 100%. But also to prevent injuries, for instance, and understand that a player might risk an injury at a certain point, depending on a lot of different data that you analyze about his body. So it's truly impacted by those technology evolution.
About the PSG itself, since 2011, the Qatari took over the club. What has it changed for it?
A lot of things have changed. The first thing is the new owners, Qatar Sports Investment, and under the leadership of our president, Nasser Al-Khelaifi, that goal of becoming a top sports brand in the world has been defined. It was very bold at that time because PSG was not, a number one in France, was definitely not a number one in Europe, but the boldness of the perspective is that they at once saw the long term. And what is interesting about this ambition, it's not about football, it's about sports. And it's not about a team or club, it's about a brand. So it's super broad, and the ambition cannot be achieved in 1 to 3 years. It's a 5, 10, 15 years project that we're in the middle of. So first of all, everything that is around the sporting side of the club, we've brought on board a lot of players. And obviously 2 superstars who are Neymar and Mbappé, and very young. One is 20, the other one is 27. So it's not just for now, it's for the future. We've invested in a new coach. We've invested in revamping our facility, our new stadium in Parc des Princes. We're going to have a new training facility, state-of-the-art, by 2021. And it's not just about football and the men's team. We have a women team that is one of the best in Europe. We have youth teams and youth academies that are really strong. We've invested in handball and judo with Stade Arena today. We also were the first professional soccer team, to have an e-sport team.
What does it mean?
E-sport is gaming, basically. We're the only team that have a chief gaming officer as part of our staff. So a huge investment on the sporting side. But also it was about creating that brand that is going to inspire people, that is going to bring more fans to the brand, that is going to bring people that are not necessarily super fan of football or will watch every single game, but that will be attracted by the brand because of other attributes of the brand.
That's my following question. What kind of experience do you want to offer to the PSG fans?
We are in a very competitive industry that competes both on the field and off the field. On the field, as I just described, a lot of investment has been made. Off the field, when we think about inspiring sports brand, you can think of Ferrari, for instance, in Formula One. You can think about the All Blacks in rugby. You can think of Real Madrid, for instance, in football, or the Lakers here in basketball. Manchester United, of course, the richest club in the world. So this is a little bit the kind of role model or target that we have and that we want to beat, especially if we talk about the soccer teams. But we have 2 very different part of our DNA who makes us really different for anyone. The first one is we have Paris at the core of our brand. And Paris, the beauty of Paris is it means so many things for so many people around the world. You think culture, history, gastronomy, design, fashion, and you name them. For anyone around the world, Paris means something. We struggle to beat maybe Manchester on the field, even if yesterday we did it. But the power of attraction of our city is so big, so strong, that we really can build around that. Plus, there is, at this stage, only really one team in Paris. When you look at all the other big capitals in Europe, or cities in Europe, they have at least 2-3 clubs. In London, you have 7. So Paris equals PSG and PSG equals Paris. The other big thing that we have that is very different from all the other teams is we're the youngest team of all. All the big teams in Europe were born, and even in France, were born early 20th century, end of the 19th century. We were born in 1970, 7-0. This allows us to be much more nimble and agile than any of those clubs. They have a huge tradition, which is big. We don't necessarily have that, but we have the power to be innovative, to change, to really be bold and try things.
When I was asking about the experience you would like to offer, is it about going to Paris?
So for American fans, obviously what is difficult is the product of their fanship is not here. One thing that we can offer first and foremost is when the team has an opportunity to come to the US, for instance, a summer tour, make sure that we give as much access to the club and the team and the players to our fans. So this is really critical because that's probably for 90% of the fans here, the only way for them to touch the product, to be close enough to the players, which is obviously the most important thing. Now, because it doesn't happen every day, we really have to be able to do two things. The number one is bring them as much content as possible. We have invested a lot, and that's where also, being creative is important in not only technology, but also in creative teams that can create content on a daily basis, obviously around what happens on the field, but also following the players in their daily life, following the players when they train, when they travel and everything, so that our fans here can have access any minute to something new about the club, to players interacting with each other. So that's really important. The other thing, of course, is to give the opportunity for those who can afford it, travel to Paris and experience the incredible atmosphere of the Parc des Princes, be able to attend a game, be able to visit our beautiful stadium, and be able to touch their passion and to have a direct connection with their favorite team.
North America is not an easy place for soccer player. What inspires your strategy the most?
As you said, North America is not an easy market. One main reason is the sport landscape is very different from, almost any other region around the world.
And the word football means something else.
Exactly. That's why I'm used to saying soccer now more than football. Football, soccer is the number one sport in the world. No doubt. You can look at any type of criteria you can measure. It's the number one. The number one in Asia, it's the number one in Europe, in Africa, and Latin America. But it's not number one here in North America. It's not number one, it's probably number 5, 6, 7, depends what kind of sports you count. But clearly you have a history and a culture of those 4 big North American sports, basketball, baseball, American football, and hockey, that are stronger. I've made a small calculation recently. You have 8,000 games of those 4 sports a year in the US. If you, on top of the National League, you count the University NCAA championship. That makes 25 games a day. So when you come and you're the 26, if you're the best match in Europe, it shows the path and the distance from becoming the number one sport. So what we have to do is look at the best practices here. And obviously there's a cultural thing that will take years before we can bridge the gap. But we can be inspired by what the big teams and those big leagues have done, especially when they try to grow outside of North America. And the NBA, for instance, is probably the best example. They have games in other continents. They have players coming from those continents. They have a pretty good TV distribution, a lot of digital and content and everything. The players are really participating in everything. So we can be inspired by that. But we can also be inspired by just what we've been able to do, we football and we PSG, at a local or regional level in Europe. We know that kids will be critical. So how can we bring football to the schools? How can we have as many kids playing football here as possible? And you can already see, especially in big cities like New York, that the school sport is soccer. Why? Because it's simple to play. You don't need any equipment. Just need a ball. You use 2 jackets to do the post, and that's it. Only basketball can really compete against that. If a kid becomes a football fan and a PSG fan, his parents will become.
How do you know that?
Oh yeah, well, one, we've done some research about it, and two, we can see that on the fields, every weekend. You have a way to educate, quote, those people about soccer, and having the kids playing it allows us to engage with those people saying, hey, soccer is a sport that obviously brings a lot in terms of values, in terms of physicality to the kids, but also is a spectacle, is a show. We're also very lucky here because the women team, the U.S. national team, is the best in the world. They're world champion. So going through the girls is also one very important factor. Now, merchandising, licensing is also something that American sports have been so good at, so strong at. They were very creative. So we are trying to do that. And that's where, going back to our unique positioning of being this lifestyle premium brand in football, we've done a lot of collaborations with brands, with artists, with fashion designers as PSG to position us as a different and attract people that are not necessarily football fans at the beginning. The pinnacle of that was last September, a partnership with Michael Jordan and the Jordan brand, which is a global brand, very well known, coming from basketball, but it's a pop culture brand. It's artists, it's musicians, it's Hollywood wearing Jordan products on top of course, a lot of artists. It brings us a lot of credibility in that field. At the same time, Jordan realized and recognized that Paris obviously is the city of fashion and design, but it's also a city where the fans are truly interested in that kind of thing beyond just what happens on the field. So that's also a way for us to get inspiration from Americas, but also to even be in advance, because that partnership was recognized all over the world and all over the sports as a truly remarkable partnership and collaboration.
In what way your success as a strategist, as a marketer, depends on the PSG results in the European leagues? How do you see that?
It's an interesting question, because going back to the ambition of becoming that global sports brand, in order to do that, if I simplify, we need 2 things. One is we need to win, because we are a soccer team. And 2 is we need to build that brand that, at the end of the day, no matter if we win or not, is going to be that preferred brand people want to follow, want to buy product for, want to go to stadium to. What happens with PSG, which is probably a little bit different from a lot of the other big teams, is we have been winning in France a lot, especially the past few years. But we have not won yet the Champions League, which is really the golden objective for any football team.
If you take Manchester United, it's the first global brand in the field. And even if their results are far away than expected, it's like the brand Manchester United is disconnected with the team's results on the field. It's an interesting way to see how the brand could evolve in the future.
I think Manchester United and the Premier League, so the English league, were really the first to acknowledge that football was becoming a global sport with millions and millions of fans, especially in Asia at the beginning. The first time those teams from England came to the US was in the early 2000s, so 15 years ago. So they were really pioneers, and that helped them build that global fan base at a time when they were having really huge success on the field. And now they can go through a few years of underperforming, let's put it this way, not winning the Premier League or not being very good in the Champions League. And the fans won't leave, and the sponsors won't leave, and the TV ratings will still be very big. Real Madrid, Barcelona, probably Bayern Munich is in the same category. We're getting there. We're really getting there. We've been having lots of successes over the past few years, so we are in that period where we grow the brand and we grow the sporting results. The goal is clearly to become a brand that can have 1 or 2 years that are going to be probably less good in terms of performance on the field. A little bit like some American top sports brand can afford. The Lakers are not playing very well. LeBron James is there. They may not qualify for the playoffs, but they will still have that huge fan base in the US and around the world. We're almost there. And every single day we know that we work on the basis of, anything can happen on the field.
Personally, what is your biggest learning from the sport industry?
One thing that for me is critical is to be curious, is to try always to understand what happens, to go beyond what you were told. Thinking about creativity, I used to say that I was not very creative because I was probably trying to understand too many things to have like the big idea. I realized that the big idea, no matter where it comes from, is also based on some discipline and being able to go beyond what you have just in front of you and just think out of the box and be curious and dig further anything that you're given. So I like this idea of not staying in front of the status quo and trying to understand how you can, if you can't go straight, you can go left or you can go right or up and down. But you have to do the effort to try and discover things yourself.
I'm gonna leave the room. Please hold the microphone and add whatever you want to the interview.
I think for those who are not necessarily sports fans, I would encourage you to either identify athletes or sportsmen who you could follow, and you could not just look at how good they are on the field, but how hard they train, how involved they are in achieving a goal. I think that what makes the difference between the top level sportsmen and women in the world, it's not just that they're gifted or they are technically superior, is they have decided one day that they wanted to reach the top of their discipline, and they are able to put everything they need into that effort. And that's something that is really inspiring, and that's something that I guess leads them to be creative whenever they need, and especially when you think that the result is over, or it's too late to come back, or maybe they cannot win. Then that commitment, that discipline, that inspiration to be able to reach the ceiling that will help them go back and have extraordinary results.
Thank you, Jérôme de Chaunac, for sharing your story. It was Sounds Like Portraits, a podcast by Philippe Ungar. Music, Charmeuse de Serpent, composed and conducted by Olivier Glisson. See you soon for the next episode.